From the ECSI Sports Studios and the #1 sports investors in America, we bring you the closing bell. As the market closes, legends Jeff Dawson and Riley Magnuson bring you all the sports investing tips for tonight's matchups. If you want to learn more from the two legends at the desk, make sure you stay tuned to the closing bell. ECSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all of your sports books and track all of your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You can also sign up for sportsbooks and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as they're the best account on the platform. Head to the App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire to download the app.
Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. This is East Coast Sports Investors Closing Bell for Tuesday, February 20th. I am your, for this evening, solo host, Riley Magnuson. I've got some new bells and whistles that I am not used to, apparently, on this here production that is looking rather fantastic. Maybe I can play around with it a little bit and get a little bit of the blockage off of there. But nonetheless, ready to rock and roll, feeling fantastic. Happy to be back here on this fine Tuesday afternoon. Obviously, not a ton going on. We still got, obviously, the All-Star game this past weekend in the NBA. Nothing going on this week, today at least. Tomorrow, either. Yesterday, nothing. So we roll into Thursday with the NBA slate. So we'll save all of that, obviously, for later in the week and see how we get going as we restart into things. But the NBA picture, obviously, the contender situation is obviously up in the air, and we're talking about, obviously, Boston, the front runner right now. And beyond that, a lot of teams that could get into that category if they get themselves right, but obviously a lot of teams with some small minor issues that are keeping them out of that serious contender spot there for the NBA. So I am excited to get going on with the next few months of the NBA season. But as far as today is concerned, mostly just talking all things college basketball here on this fine Tuesday night. Last night, no show last night. Really only a couple games last night. Houston takes care of Iowa State, holds them off, and helps their standing, obviously, in the Big 12 there, as well as a top 3 team in the nation. Not to be forgotten about is Iowa State, who obviously didn't have their best in that one, was a little outmatched. And stylistically, maybe that's, kind of playing a similar brand of basketball that Houston plays. So, in Houston, obviously not a fantastic matchup for them, but Iowa State is a problem with what they can do defensively. So I'm interested to see where they go as we go on the rest of the season and into March as a dark horse there for the tournament, really. Tough to envision them making a deep run and cutting down the nets, but their defense is that good, and as I've said this year, their offense is a lot better than it was in previous years, which has given them a chance to be a potential top 10 team. So as far as tonight is concerned, like I said, a handful of a few really, really good games. Some other, non-ranked teams that are at least worth talking about here a little bit here tonight. But without further ado, going to be short and sweet, my friends. So let's go ahead and get on into it and get on out of here. First one up, I think kind of a standalone beginning here to the college basketball slate. 5:30 my time, 6:30 East Coast time is a Butler and Villanova Big East battle with Villanova team 14-11, 6.5-point favorites over the 16-10 Butler team. I believe last I saw on a lot of bracketologies, they had Butler on the inside of the field Villanova, more of a chance than some people are giving them. Some bracketology didn't really have them sniffing it. A handful had them within the first 4 to 8 teams out of the tournament, and so obviously this poses to be a big game for both of these teams. The interesting thing about this one, I don't have a strong selection, but at least kind of peeling back the layers here of this one. The interesting thing of this one, you've had obviously a team with a lesser record, a team that probably isn't thought as highly this year in Villanova, obviously, but they've won 3 of their last 4. Not earth-shattering wins, but a couple of them they beat Providence, they beat Seton Hall, both in their home gym. They beat, obviously, Georgetown on the road, not anything to write home about there, but 3 out of 4, their one lone loss at Xavier. And I mentioned that because Butler has lost 3 of their last 4, but in their case, it's 3 losses to UConn, Marquette, and Creighton. So the big 3 in the Big East right now. So nothing too much that you can, not a ton that you can really write them off for. Didn't look fantastic in those games, aside from a tough Marquette being the lone game that they actually gave a decent run at it. So it is a tough one to call here with where these two teams are at. The interesting thing to note, I would say, is that back about a month ago, a little less than a month ago, Butler wins in their home gym 88-81 as 7-point, or wins by 7, not 7-point favorites, wins by 7 as 1.5-point favorites, so short favorites. So on a neutral floor, they're kind of telling you with that line and this line that Villanova is the better team. So in my opinion, the 6.5 is a little too much to lay with this Villanova team. They typically don't lay the wood down too much on teams, with the exception of this last few weeks, honestly. So, if you're buying a little too much into, or if you're buying Villanova right now, you might be buying a little too much into what they've done these last couple of weeks. Not to say that they can't get it done. I do think that they can and will win this game. The 6.5 is a little too much for me, though. You obviously could and probably will have a spirited Butler team trying to get back into the win column here, and obviously avoid a loss that would kind of put them closer and closer to the actual edge of that bubble, which they obviously don't want to be in. So there's going to be some urgency from both sides on this one. So this is a really tough one. This is actually a really good matchup. I'm going to lean towards Villanova winning, but the cover situation, I'm going to have to stay away from on this one. Game total 138.5. For these two teams tonight. Last one was 140 and went flying up over 88-81. These two teams have been, for the most part, kind of right around those numbers. Butler typically lives a little bit higher than that, quite a bit higher than in certain games, in certain opponents. So I'm going to lean towards this one being a little bit more defensive in this one, go towards the full game total under, or even maybe Butler, kind of what would be surprising to a lot of teams if they don't get to 65.5, but I'm going to lean towards Butler, maybe struggling offensively a little bit here. Might be fine defensively, and we get a low-scoring 60s game. But I'm going to lean towards the under on this one as a play that I'm more interested in than either side in this game. But either way, I think you could sell yourself on either of these two teams tonight here in the Big East, which is going to be a big battle there. I don't want to say the loser is out. I think if Villanova loses, they're obviously putting themselves up in a tough spot. I think they've got a couple of bigger – I don't know off the top of my head, but I want to say UConn and Creighton both on their schedule, so obviously if they get those knocked down, then they'll be back into things. But Villanova should have maybe a little more sense of urgency. But like I said, I'm going to back away from the side and go towards the total on that one. Moving on down the list, Iowa, Michigan State. I know a Big Ten guy, but Iowa, I typically, that's the one team that I mostly stay away from with the exception of once or twice in the season. Michigan State playing really solid right now. They've won 4 of their last 5, including a nice win at home against Illinois. Couple of these last 2 at Penn State, at Michigan. No, obviously not stamping that on their resume and saying they're getting in because of it. But as we said, even these lesser teams in the Big Ten this year are no tin cans, no pushers completely. Michigan has been bad, I get it. But it's still tough to play in these places. So those are two solid wins that they kind of hadn't been getting earlier in the season at times. Not at least stringing these along. So Michigan State is on the right track. I don't want to say they're making a deep run to the Final Four, but a team that, another Tom Izzo team that's poised to be a lot better here this next month and a half, and they're starting to show it right now in February, which is typically what we usually look for is this time of year for Michigan State. So I do expect them to get this win at home. They've been very protective of their home court really all season after that James Madison loss. I'm drawing a blank on what their other lone home loss is. But at the end of the day, they've been a heck of a lot better in their home gym than that lone loss at the beginning of the season gives them credit for. They lost at home to Wisconsin, which was December 5th. So it's been over 2 months since they have lost at home. Maybe would be interested in this line being double digits if I was hammering Michigan State here tonight. Iowa obviously is just a Jekyll and Hyde team. This is the first time these two teams have played this year. Split last year. If you want two ways that it could go, at Michigan State last year, 63-61 victory for Michigan State. At Iowa, 112-106, which I want to say was, I don't remember if there was multiple overtimes or one overtime, but obviously about as contradicting as two games can be, two close games can be there for two different teams. Iowa, as far as right now, is really going back and forth, win-loss, win-loss. For the most part, those wins, at least the last five especially, it's been all home wins. So on the road, this defense certainly doesn't travel. This offense has not been as good at on the road here. So I'm going to lean towards Michigan State. I will lean towards this total at 154.5. I'll lean towards the over as well. This is even on kind of the, I don't want to say the holy cow high side for Iowa, but their last couple of games have been either right around this or even lower than this. So I do think this is one where you're going to see some points, not necessarily both teams in the hundreds, but at the end of the day, wouldn't shock me if Michigan State's team total 82.5. Kind of lean towards Michigan State potentially getting up over that. Their offense is working well right now. Their defense is working well. So I think you could see some defense leading to that offense in a game like this with Iowa here. So this one could be a big blowout. Could be a close one. Iowa could shoot 50% from the field. That's why I don't really touch these Iowa games. But I do think Michigan State is going to take care of business here and continue to chug along here as we get on with the rest of this regular season and into the conference tournaments here. All right, I've really only got three games left that I really want to talk about here. I'm going to skip over these next two chronologically kind of here because I'm going to put a couple of favorites on Upset Watch a little bit there. The one that not a favorite but a lesser-ranked team per the AP that before we talk about those other two, we'll talk about here. Baylor and BYU, really, really good game, along with one of the other games I'm talking about in a second here, one of the best games of the evening here. Per the AP, Baylor 11, BYU 25. Per KenPom, the story is quite a bit closer than that. I believe Baylor is 12. I believe BYU is 16th. So we're at home here in this one. BYU minus 4.5 point favorites, depending on where you're looking. And this BYU team really just hasn't had a massive win to really garner a lot of people's eyes and get them looking at them. Whereas Baylor has had some good wins. They've had some tough losses. I think BYU is as good, if not better, than Baylor, and certainly I agree with them being the favorites here at home. They did play once already this season, a little over a month ago in Baylor, 81-72, as Baylor as 4.5 point favorites. So now you flip the script to BYU being the favorites here. And I'm certainly leaning towards BYU. I saw a lot of situations where it's different books, where it's kind of a pros versus Joes, where the general public is all over the almost top 10 team per the AP and Baylor as 4.5 point dogs. And a lot of the big money is all over Baylor. I was interested in it before that, but at the end of the day, I think, it obviously wouldn't shock me if they can't cover 4.5, but I do think it's a nice statement here for BYU. I think they are worthy of the number here. So I'm going to lean towards BYU, laying the points here at home against Baylor there. These other two, the other one that's probably arguably the biggest game of the night, at least on paper, best game of the night. Get to this point in the season, obviously, you've got bubble matchups that you could argue are bigger games with teams trying to fight for their playoff lives and whatnot. But as far as biggest teams go and best teams go, you've got UConn and Creighton here. Really not as much drama with UConn beating Marquette over the weekend for the Big East here. I think they've got a 3-game lead over Marquette. They play them one more time, so if UConn loses this one and Marquette can get on a roll, they play one more time, so maybe it's still up in the air. But for the most part, UConn obviously just had their biggest game of the season this past weekend. Now they've got Creighton at Creighton, on the road at Creighton. They've got Villanova in their home gym this Saturday. Whereas Creighton, this is kind of their Super Bowl, if you will, here, whereas UConn just had it. So as far as why this game is as close as it suggests here, 2.5, that is the biggest reason why. So if you're buying into UConn at this low number, I would say buyer beware here. It's a 24-2 UConn team, very, very good team. Would it shock me if they just showed up and were the better team? Absolutely not. They absolutely could. They've done it for the most part all season long. But we did see this a little bit last year with UConn as well, where they hit a little snag in the Big East schedule, where they some tough road games. I can see this being one of those spots here tonight. So, I'm kind of backing off of it because we've kind of talked about it on the show, and obviously Jeff Dawson's tapped in closer to the Big East than I am. But Creighton, who has been playing really well lately, they've won 3 in a row. Xavier, Georgetown, Butler, these last 3 wins. Very nice win at Butler, 2.5-point favorites. They win by 22. But I think you understand what I'm saying. They haven't had a huge win in a while. I think this is going to be a big one for their resume here. Carol Bucks, thank you for popping in. Getting right on rolling into tonight's slate. Only a couple more games to talk about, and then we'll be off and rolling here. But Creighton and UConn, one game already this year. UConn wins 62-48. So that UConn defense was pretty fantastic early in the season against Creighton there at home. Don't remember if that was at Stores or at the XL Center. But nonetheless, obviously UConn rocking and rolling. Not to mention, I mentioned they beat Marquette, but they beat them by almost 30. So if there's any letdown spot, this would be the one for it. Again, would it shock me if UConn took care of business? No. But you got to be aware of UConn here on the road tonight in the Big East. This is going to be a tough battle, and Creighton is going to give them everything they've got. So I'm going to lean towards Creighton here. Hope Jeff Dawson's covering his ears, but I'm going to lean towards Creighton here tonight. Curious to see if he would agree with me or not. But you got to at least, if anything, at least beware of this UConn number here tonight. The other one in the Big Ten with 2 teams that's actually Wisconsin has fallen out of the AP with the way they've been playing lately. Still going to be a tournament team here. But Maryland at Wisconsin here tonight. Maryland also not playing well by any means either. They've lost 4 of their last 5 along with Wisconsin here. Wisconsin got that bounce-back win exactly a week ago at home against Ohio State. Go on the road over, I want to say it was Saturday or Sunday, and lose at Iowa 86-88. It's a tough stylistic matchup at times, or, they dominate with their pace. But obviously 88-86, Iowa kind of imposed their style on them there, whereas Maryland not really taking care of business at all aside from this win against Iowa themselves last week in their home gym there. So Maryland has not been very good here on the road, but with the 7.5 number, a little surprised me, a little short in my opinion. Obviously, with the way Wisconsin's playing, their numbers are starting to dip a little bit here. But you've got a team favored at home against Ohio State last week as 9-point favorites. They only win by 8, so obviously that brings it down a little bit here. But kind of just comparing to some of the home lines that they've had throughout the entire season. You've got a situation earlier in the year against the Northwestern team that's going to be a no doubt, or I shouldn't say no doubt, but assuming they don't collapse, a no doubt tournament team in Northwestern that was 8.5 on their spread, and Northwestern's quite a bit better than Maryland this year. So it was concerning to me to not see a Wisconsin kind of statement bounce back situation here. Would it surprise me if they win? No, I'm not saying they're guaranteed to lose because of this number. I'm just saying it does kind of smell like this one could be a really, really close game. Maryland kind of fighting for whatever last-ditch effort they have. They're not going to be a tournament team, but if they can get some momentum going into the Big Ten tournament, you never know. So I am concerned about Wisconsin tonight with this number here. Again, do I think they can win this game? Absolutely. They've got a great home atmosphere. But it does kind of smell like this one is going to be a close game here. I'm trying to find some other home lines for this Wisconsin team. 12-point favorites at home against Indiana earlier this year. Like I said, that 8.5, 9-point favorites. A lot of those situations against the teams that have been, in the same category as Maryland or better. So I am concerned about this Wisconsin line tonight. I am probably going to be interested in Maryland plus the 7.5 tonight. But obviously, we've obviously been a little bit of a thorn in our side, this Maryland team on these shows. So we'll back off of it from a little bit. But at the end of the day, I am concerned about Wisconsin here in their home building tonight to at least cover this game. They've got plenty of games coming up where they can take care of business. They're not going to completely collapse to where they fall out of the tournament picture. They've got a nice little break after this. They don't play at all over the weekend here. And then they finish with Illinois, Rutgers, and Purdue. So obviously got to get that Rutgers win, but a tough schedule after this one. So they should be focused. But, if I was really believing in this Wisconsin team, it would be a 9-10-point favorite situation here for me tonight here in the Kohl Center. So without further ado, I don't believe I have too many other games that I really felt comfortable talking about that I saw anything worth noting for. Obviously, you've got another situation, Utah State, San Diego State, where a ranked team is the underdog there. But both teams, I mean, record-wise, I mean, Utah State wins that game, they're going to be the ranked team. So nothing crazy to write home about there. TCU as an underdog, 5.5-point dogs, is kind of a little bit of a statement to Texas Tech, but I felt like that one was a little too many there. And then some other good bubble games that I'm curious to see who's hungry in those games. So I don't want to dive too deep into them, but you've got a Syracuse and NC State game that either of those teams get scorching hot. They could be knocking on the door of the bubble there. Same thing with Wake is knocking on the door of the bubble, but Wake and Pitt in the ACC, also a good bubble game there. So I'm going to go ahead and get on out of here, my friends. I will let you go and get to it, and hopefully you find some winners here on this college basketball slate tonight. Like I said, now a little over an hour until we get kicked off in the Big East, and then plenty of other games across other conferences as well. So hopefully you found some value in some of these games that I'm talking about, my friends. I will be back here tomorrow, I believe, for another solo show, same time tomorrow. I believe probably just college basketball again, as there's still no NBA tomorrow. And then we'll get rocking and roll with it on Thursday and Friday with Jeff, I do believe, with the return of the NBA on top of whatever we can find in the college basketball world. Maybe a little MLB chatter, but I know him and Scotty West got to it last night, kicking off their conversations, getting geared up for this season. So I'll be excited for that. For the MLB as a whole, we'll see what my feelings are for my White Sox here. But nonetheless, I will go ahead and get on out of here. Thank you all for stopping by. I appreciate you all as always. Thank you all for commenting with us. And best of luck on anything you got going on tonight. I will see y'all tomorrow.